Y'all remember the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom where the one thing everyone speculated on was if he could play as Zelda? I feel there were a dozen other things to be more excited about, but given how prominent she was in the game's marketing and shit, I could see why people thought that. And then the game came out and she was delegated to cutscenes, turning into a scaly, and being in a whodunit with Ganondorf. At first, I didn't see the appeal of playing as her, especially since Link can just do so much cool shit in this game. But then I realized, for all the badass characters in Zelda, there've only been a handful of times where we play as them. Not to say they haven't tried, like Medley and Makar in Wind Waker or the Beetle in Skyward Sword, but these are few and far between, some of which too being blink and you'll miss it type shit. So today I thought it'd be fun to go over the rare occasions you play as someone besides Link in a Zelda game. The only rules are no transformations like Wolf Link or the Mask variants, and it's gotta be a mainline game, so no Wand of Gamelon or Hyrule Warriors or that stupid ass Tingle game. Goddamn rules land over here. Alright, let's do it. You know, it just dawned on me, I talk about Majora's Mask a lot. I'm not gonna apologize if you think it's annoying, at least I make it pertain to the subject I'm talking about. So it's only fitting this was also the first Zelda to let you play as another character, that being KAFEI. Towards the end of the Anduin KAFEI quest, you follow him into Sakon's hideout to steal back the Sun's Mask. But after KAFEI steps on the most obvious trap ever, like how did you not see that, dog? It activates a conveyor belt and starts pulling away the mask. So now you gotta switch between Link and KAFEI to stop the mask from reaching the end. Now that may sound cool, but honestly it's kinda underwhelming. For starters, the only thing you're doing with KAFEI is pressing switches to open doors for Link. He doesn't have any special abilities or changes to gameplay, really the only thing he can do is a lame ass slap. I know I shouldn't expect anything crazy because of how short this section is, but that's another thing too, it's just so abrupt and ends before you know it. At least with Link you're fighting enemies, with KAFEI you're just looking for the one blue switch in a sea of red and yellow ones. Oh, it's so hard, I don't know which one it's gonna be. And the funniest thing is if by some miracle you lose, you have to do the entire Anduin KAFEI quest again. Not just Sakon's hideout, but registering at the Stockpot Inn, mailing Andu's letter, giving her KAFEI's necklace, everything. So despite how brain dead this part may seem, do not mess up unless you want to waste another 30 minutes to get another chance. I'm not upset with how short this part is, if anything, it's kind of funny. By the time Majora's Mask came out, the Zelda series had a plethora of characters that would have been awesome to play as. So I just love how they passed up all these great candidates for a man-child with purple hair. Bottom line, it's kinda noteworthy, but also lame. Alright, let's move on. Okay, I'm gonna be straight with you guys. I don't get the Groose hyperfixation. He's a fun character and has a cool arc, but with all the dweebs freaking out about him and saying he's like the second coming of Christ, it's just kinda Reddit. I don't like using that term, but it's really the only way I can describe it. So wouldn't you know it, he's also another playable character. During the second and third imprisoned fights, because remember you fight this stupid thing 3 times, Groose helps out by lob-slobbing bombs at him with his patented Groosenator. It's basically just a catapult he's got a massive hard-on for. Like, he monologues about it for like 3 minutes while the imprisoned is breaking free. Like with KAFEI, these are pretty sudden and over before you know it. Which is a shame, because at least with Groose, it's way more fleshed out than just pressing switches. There's actually some strategy to this, positioning the Groosenator on the track, lining up your shots, fighting against the goddamn motion controls. There's a lot of missed potential here. It would have been sick if you fought an entire boss with just Groose. Like, what if they made the third imprisoned fight the second one instead, and then made a new third fight where it's like roaming around Faron Woods and Groose put a bunch of tracks everywhere, because what else is he gonna do? And you're just driving around shooting at him. I wouldn't complain. I don't think anybody would. Overall, it's okay. Again, it's pretty abrupt, but I can tell there was some type of plan or idea with Groose. The idea was there, it just needed to be fleshed out more. But I'll say, this clears fighting bosses with the champions in Tears of the Kingdom. You don't even play as them. You're just waiting for an opening and pressing a button, and then they're like, oh, get ready to use my special ability, Link. Great job, Link. I love you, Link. You're doing so well, Link. Okay, I haven't played Phantom Hourglass in over a decade, and sometimes I'm a little afraid to. I remember really liking it as a kid, but given this game is kinda infamous for having a lot of weird and gimmicky ideas, I feel I'd end up not enjoying it too much and get kinda sad. But the one thing the game did that I loved was playing as Gongoron in the Goron Temple. About 2/3 of the way in, you're tasked with getting the Crimsonian from the temple, and everyone's chillin' and vibing with Link except for Gongoron, who's kind of an annoying little shit. He ends up getting captured, and as you're rescuing him, the game puts you in control of both him and Link. This section is awesome, because there's surprisingly a lot of stuff you can do as Gongoron. I'm just gonna call him Gon from now on, that name is stupid to say. You can roll around, jump over obstacles, ground pound enemies. It's very similar to Goron Link, so you'll get the hang of it instantly if you played Majora's Mask. There's also strategy with switching back and forth, as they share the same health, and enemies can still attack the character who's not being controlled. It keeps you on your feet, you gotta be antsy, you gotta be excited, you know? And to make this even better, you get to control him during the boss fight with Dangoron Goro. During this one, you'll switch to Gon to knock the boss on its side, and then attack it with Link. It's pretty easy, honestly, but I love how Gon leaves prematurely, and then there's a whole second phase to the fight with just Link. And then you confront him about it, and he's like, oopsies. This section is awesome. Gon's versatility, strategizing with both characters, and again, the boss fight. It's so good. Part of me wishes you got to play as another character for every late game dungeon, but Gon's inclusion is still really cool. Same thing with Phantom Hourglass. I haven't played Spirit Tracks in years, but fortunately for this video, one of the game's main mechanics is controlling multiple characters, that being Zelda after she died. And before, during a stealth section, so technically, this is the first time you play as her in an official release. Cool. She tags along on the adventure, acting as a guide, but can also possess enemies in the Spirit Tower called Guardians. They're huge-ass knights that lurk around, but each floor has ones with different abilities that are used to complete the dungeon. Like ones with a huge shield you cross lava with, or ones that turn into wrecking balls to clear a path. One of my favorite parts is when you gotta use all the different versions on floor 6. It's a great way to test the player's knowledge and memory of how they all work. The only problem, well no, there are two problems. One, the way you control Zelda is really annoying. You have to draw a path on the bottom screen in the direction you want to move her. It's not terrible at first, but when you watch the Guardians move at a snail's pace for hours, it kinda sucks. And two, you don't get to possess anything else. No other enemies, bosses, NPCs. I know this was a DS game from 2009, so there's only so much they could have done. But no, they could have done way more with this idea. Let's not kid ourselves. I wish I had more to talk about with this one. Unlike all the other entries, this isn't a random out-of-nowhere thing or just for a boss fight. This is supposed to be one of the game's main mechanics, so it's kinda sad I'm blanking right now. I apologize to the 7 Spirit Tracks elitists out there. When I was making this list, I wanted to only have one entry per game. That sounds kinda crazy since Zelda games are lucky enough to have more than one playable character, but wouldn't you know it, Wind Waker is a little different. I mentioned Medley and Makar during the intros. They're both used for completing dungeons, but you can also control seagulls with the Hyoi pairs to solve like 3 puzzles. These are the ones most people know about, but for my pick, I wanted to do something a little more out there. The King of Red Lions. Okay, I was a little under the influence when thinking about this, but I'm gonna make the argument that you play as the King of Red Lions when sailing in Wind Waker, not as Link steering it. Whenever you're sailing, you're controlling the boat itself. The sail, the cannon, jumping, you're not controlling Link. All the power goes over to the ship. And I know he asks you to get the sail when y'all meet, but realistically, since Red Lions knows where all the islands and important shit is, he wouldn't trust a child with navigating. You could argue too that also means Epona and the Crimson Loftwing are playable characters too, since you technically steered them around and crap, but I don't see them as characters, more just like methods of transportation. Red Lions is a character because he has dialogue, he guides you, he's integral to the plot. He's more than just a tool to get from point A to point B. Without the Red Lions, there'd be no Wind Waker. So anytime you step foot onto His Majesty, remember he's the one calling shots. He's choosing which islands to go to, which treasure charts to find, and which of the huge scary Octoroks to fight. Please save all your comments trying to debunk this. I'm just gonna delete them. Anyways, that was a little dive into Zelda's petite history of playing as other characters besides Link. There were some cool ideas, but a lot of these were pretty half-baked. I'm not sure if it was because of time or the devs having trouble incorporating them, but just barely crossing the line of disappointment. It's crazy because literally every Zelda game has tons of characters that would be so cool to play as, at least for more than 5 minutes. And the reason I'm harping on this isn't just because of how they'd affect gameplay, but the story too. Because fun fact, according to page 297 of the Zelda Encyclopedia, Skyward Sword was originally going to have a second campaign where you played as Zelda after beating the main game. It took place at the same time as the main story, but it would have filled in the gaps between each time you ran into her and Impa. You'd not only be playing as a whole new character with unique moves and abilities, but also getting a whole different perspective on arguably one of the best Zelda stories. Thankfully, Nintendo's doing this with Echoes of Wisdom, the first mainline game in this franchise's almost 40 years of existence that actually lets you play as the person whose name is in the title. Also, I'm calling it, people are gonna break the shit out of this game. I guarantee someone's gonna beat it in like 20 minutes on day one. I bet you $5 that's gonna happen. As long as the game's fun, that's all that matters. Because if it does well, we'll be closer to getting a Zelda game where you play as Beetle, and that would just be great.